Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. This is Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is creating unity through music, but as I like to say, making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And today I am in Studio 1 of the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society. We're connected by Zoom to Tennessee, and a good friend who I met at Victor Wooten's Theory of Music camp at Wooten Woods, Linda Helms. Linda, thanks so much for taking the time to have a conversation.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Jeff.
Yeah, well, I remember very distinctly when we first met. It was in the barn, sitting at, I guess we were at dinner or something, at Wooten Woods, and you came over and said, well, I'm interested in learning about podcast stuff, and somebody said to talk to you. So there we go, and next thing you know, we were talking about singing bowls and all kinds of stuff, and have had great conversations later, really nice connection there at Wooten Woods, and with, Jeff Arbor and Alex Landry as well, and everybody, and so anyway, it's been great meeting you, and I think we have a new way to talk about music in a sense, because you're all about those healing sounds of the bowls.
Well, music, as we know, is something that is an integral part of our souls and our lives, and so with the bowls, they go so deep because, and I think they've been around forever. I mean, there's a lot of different traditions of how the sound bowls actually came to be, but they are not only music, they're also medicine. And they provide and have provided for many cultures a way to go deep within the soul, as well as to transform disease and discord within the body.
Wow, and I know you've had some experiences with that. We've talked about that sort of thing. But let me ask first, just how did, I usually ask, how did music come into your life, or when or how and whatever. But maybe I'll just say, how did music, what do you remember about music and or sound in the generic sense coming into your life, and how did that lead to, where you are now? I mean, did you play music when you were younger? Or?
Well, I did. I started out playing the flute in fourth grade. I always have loved music. I mean, from the time I can remember, my mom always had the stereo on. She loved music. She loved dancing. And so we grew up with music. And I remember very distinctly, I had been listening, of course, to the Beatles. This was in the 60s.
Yeah.
And my parents, we went to the grocery store, and they happened to have a record department in the grocery store.
A record department in the grocery store? That's a good grocery store.
It was kind of like one of those, well, the West Coast, we have Fred Meyer's, and they're called superstores, and they have everything in them. And so it was kind of the first initial type of store like that. And I loved the record department. It was my favorite department. And we went there one night, and I went and I pulled out the Meet the Beatles album.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Right?
Yep.
And I can remember bringing the album up to my dad and mom and saying, could I please have this? Can I please have this? And they were in this intense conversation, and you could see the look of panic on their face, and they were not listening to me, which was unusual. And, I'm tugging on their shirt, and I'm hearing, we've just declared war in Vietnam.
Whoa.
And I could feel the vibration all around. Everybody in the store just had this panic look on their face. And here I am holding this album. I'm so excited. Meet the Beatles, right? And so it was a very profound moment in my life, knowing that those two juxtapositions of something that was really, profound and scary for a little, 5-year-old. And then also this pure joy of having this new music here. And I remember my dad turning around and just gently putting his hand on my shoulder and looking at me and said, "Of course you can have it, I'll look."
Oh, nice.
And I just, of course, skipped away. But that left a little imprint on me, and it soothed me. Of course you can have that music, darling. It was so soothing in that moment. And so that really, from that moment on, music took on almost a different color for me than it might have not if that moment had not occurred.
Wow. Well, the Vietnam War was not a very harmonious type of a thing.
No.
That's for sure.
Well, the vibration of everyone around me was so panicked, and yet holding that album was almost like a security blanket. Right. And my dad touching me and telling me, yes, it's okay.
So when you were 5, but you did sort of perceive the vibrational aspect of it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And is that something that you've been sort of tuning into vibrations for a long time, huh?
Yeah, well, ever since I can remember, and that was a time where I understood. I think most kids do. I think they grow out of it or they're moved out of it. But yes, I've been able to keep that essence of understanding vibration, feeling it, working with it, loving it, exuding it,
Well, it's cool. It's sort of what we are, That's what science says. So did you end up playing flute for a long time? Do you still play music? Did you play in groups or bands? You take lessons? What was your trajectory to bridge us to the healing bowl, singing bowl conversation?
Well, I really wanted to play an instrument, and I wanted to play the drums. And no one wanted me to play the drums. My mom loved music, but she did not want a drum set in the house.
Yeah.
And my music teacher said that girls were not going to play drums in his band.
Daggone.
I know. Now today he'd probably be fired for that, but
yeah.
Back then that was okay. And it was very disappointing. And he said, well, you can play the flute. And he gave me the flute. So I never really connected with the flute. It was almost like, here, you have to play this. And I was a good student. I was a good kid. I took my flute and I practiced. And I was never very good at it. I really liked throwing the music away and just going off on my own and just playing notes and playing what I was feeling. But that wasn't acceptable in band. But I did get to learn to read music, which was, I think, a real gift.
Yep.
And I'm sure I learned music theory, a little bit of it. I didn't remember any of it as I got older.
I've heard from more than one person that the instrument sort of picks you, and that if somebody hands you the wrong instrument, it just doesn't necessarily work. And I suppose people, they can play all kinds of different instruments, but there needs to be some sort of an affinity there, so I can understand what you're going. So you didn't really keep on with the flute.
Mm-mm.
No, and then you didn't really have another instrument. You weren't in bands or anything like that when you were a teenager.
No, I just loved music, and I found that when I would go to listen to music, I could tap in to something, and I didn't really know what it was then. But it was something that was going on, and I don't want to say behind the music, because it wasn't behind the music. It was in the music, but it was something else. And as we know now, it was some vibrational essence that I was into. And I could feel energies around. I could feel energies around me, around the musicians. And I would tap into those energies and communicate with them, is the best way to say. It wasn't a language that we would understand. It was a heart language. It was a vibrational language.
Yeah.
And as I tuned in and listened deeply to whatever it was that I was hearing, I could deepen the vibration of those essences that were around us. Those
deepen it for yourself, or
deepen it for myself. And as I deepened it for myself, I kept noticing the musicians were having it seemed like a more joyful experience. And at first I just thought, well, I'm making that stuff up. That is totally not happening. But as this happened more and more, and I have a number of friends that are, most of my friends are musicians, I started kind of timidly asking them. And they actually confirmed what I was feeling. And they were like, yeah, I was really feeling this different connection, this deeper connection tonight or today or when we were playing. And so then they started kind of doing the research for me. And so that's why now I know when I go to listen to music and I go into this deep, I call it a meditative space. It's like an enhancement or a support.
very interesting, because it's one thing that I've come to appreciate is, if you're playing music, that's one thing, and you can practice or play songs by yourself, but it's a whole different thing if there's other people, 2 or 3, or an audience, but that they're also all participating in that. Mm-hmm. It's a different feel if I'm sitting right here in Studio One of the Worldwide Headquarters practicing guitar versus playing with a bunch of people. And it has to be the case that there's something underneath that's connecting everybody. It's just that you were really sort of feeling it.
I think it's a gift. I mean, for me, it's truly a gift. And it started to expand into all sorts of different areas in my life through education, through conversation. I mean, music is a conversation. And so when you listen deeply to someone in a conversation, it allows them to be more of who they are. It creates the space.
So what you're saying is, if you're in a conversation with somebody and you're present and mm-hmm. listening and paying attention, that affects them and the way that they feel and how they can interrelate with you.
Exactly. That resonance creates that expansion of space. That resonance meaning the deep listening that you're giving them. There's a beautiful Buddhist monk. His name is Thich Nhat Hanh. Mm-hmm. One of the things that he focuses on in his teaching is deep listening. And you are present and you're holding that space of deep listening with someone. It truly is what can allow the opportunity for many, many things: deep healing, expansion of one's heart. It's a beautiful thing, and I think I just intuitively understood that at a very young age.
Is it also the case that if someone that you're listening to is sort of, I don't know, fearful or tense or defensive, or sort of not that it's harder to give them that space to listen, or how does that?
Well, that's where the key comes in, because when you are concerned about what they think about you, then you're going to be right there with them in that place inside of them. You're going to reflect that back. But if you can hold yourself apart, if you have your own focus, your own rootedness in your own knowing that you are seeing them as who they truly are, as source energy, and you listen from that place, you will find, it's never not happened, where, well, one of two things will happen. They'll just basically cut the conversation off, turn around and leave. Or those defense mechanisms will slowly start to break away, and you'll find openings to have even deeper conversations within that moment that you are together and connected.
So when did you start with the bowls? Was that something that when did you, and maybe that's not even the right question. Maybe there's a precursor to the bowls, but I know now that you're into sound healing, and you've told me that it can have amazing effects on people working with these bowls. Was that fairly recently? Was there?
Well, it was in 2003. My daughter was in a very, very serious car accident. She was pronounced dead on arrival. And at the same time, I had been in a car accident about 9 months previous to that, and had an interesting effect from the whiplash, which we know now, was the cause of my eyes closing down. First they swelled up and then they shut tight. And the doctors basically had said that I had orbital pseudotumor and it was a terminal illness.
Ooh.
So these two events collided within a month of each other. As we healed and went through the process, and by the way, my daughter is just perfect now. She came out of that 100%.
Nice.
And I did too. And that's kind of another side story. But through that process, when we were in Seattle and she was at Harborview, I walked into a store and I heard this sound. And I turned to my girlfriend who was there helping me and I said, I have to have that sound. It's just speaking so deep to me. Wow. And I really didn't know anything about sound bowls then. And so we went and we found out what it was. And it was a crystalline quartz sound bowl. And I purchased it immediately and brought it home. And it has been a member of our family ever since. Uh-huh. But it was a significant component in our healing through that process, which took a couple of years.
Wow. So it really made a difference here. And it helped with you overcoming this issue that you had that they said was terminal.
Well, it was definitely an aspect of that. There's no question about that. I found out that the reason that all happened was actually because of something that was going on in my neck. My atlas bone had been misaligned, and it was stopping cerebral fluid from coming into my head, which was creating a backup, and my eyes then exhibited that process that was happening in the body. I found a chiropractor who could adjust the atlas. And in 5 weeks, I was fine. So, yeah. And my daughter today, my youngest daughter, is an atlas chiropractor. So there was a lot of ties through this whole experience.
So you heard that sound, and that was kind of a very memorable, distinctive point. And then I guess did you start buying more healing bowls? And I know since then you've taken courses, you've been with a lot of, I think you have a teacher or a mentor or whatever the right word is, in Colorado that you've worked with, and how has that been coming along? What has been your the process there?
I worked with the crystal bowls. And yes, I have a number of the crystal bowls and worked with them for many years. And we live on Hood Canal. We have another home on Hood Canal in Washington. And so playing the bowls out in nature and on the water. And then I have students that I would, teach. And it's just been a wonderful aspect of my life. And I never really even thought about the metal bowls until a couple of years ago. I met several women that had studied with the gentleman that I went to Boulder to study with. And again, it was interesting. It was sort of like the first time I heard the crystal bowl. When we were talking, they're both sound bowl practitioners. They have a retreat center outside of Portland. And they had done a sound bath, that's what they call it, on me. And I was totally enamored. I couldn't believe what my body was feeling. I had not felt that with our crystal bowls. And so I asked them, I said, can you teach me how to do this? And they were like, no, but we have a teacher in Boulder. We learned from him. And they said his name. And as soon as they said his name, it was like the crystal sound bowl. I knew I had to go and study with him.
Wow.
So,
I love that. I love that when that kind of thing happens. So what is it about maybe you could explain a little bit more about what a sound bath is, what a sound practitioner does. I mean, what do you do, and maybe some of the experiences that you've had working with folks that have been positive?
The teacher that I went to study from is from Nepal, and his family is from the traditional Himalayan sound bowl family. And so he has an oral tradition through his clan, is what they call it. And it is not only has he created what they call protocols, meaning they put together different notes, different bowls that have different notes. His oral tradition has these protocols. So the combination of those and what he has brought through are very powerful sound medicine. So when you use what they call a sound bath, is you have the individual who comes to you, and it's like a musical instrument that's out of tune. You know, our bodies get out of tune, and so we have to then retune them. And that's what the sound bowls do, is they help retune the bodies. And most of what they teach, and even though there are specific protocols, underlying all of that is intention. And so when you have someone in front of you, for example, I had a woman the other day, she has lung cancer. And I instinctively knew what kind of protocol I wanted to use on her. I was going to use an F bowl for the root chakra, a B bowl for the crown chakra, a D bowl for the heart chakra, and a G bowl for the solar plex chakra.
Sort of all of it at the same time, or you sort of do one and then the other?
Well, you start with one, and then you add another, and then you go back and forth.
Uh-huh.
And so sort of these complex rhythms, and it would almost be like reading music, these complex pieces of music that you learn for specific types of, I don't want to say diseases, but, think maladies. And through that process, I was feeling like, no, I really want to bring in my E-bowl. And my E-bowl is for the third eye chakra area. And my intellect is saying, well, that's really not what's going on with her. But my intuition is saying, bring that bowl. And I know better. I listen to my intuition now. I bring that bowl in. And it's interesting, after the sound bath was done, she said, that was my favorite sound. It took me so deep. I went to a place where I was a child and I was free and I wasn't sick anymore.
Wow.
So, I don't know how the specifics, the magic of this works, other than I know that sound is a powerful element in moving in and out of the body. It flows like water through the body, and it allows the cells and the neurons in the brain to have a relaxation time out, which then repairs. But the magic is something that comes from, I believe, my teacher believes as well, is the intention. So when you go into a sound bath, you go into it with the intention of allowing the individual that you're working on to go deep within themselves to ignite their own healing process.
Yeah, because one does heal oneself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think you also mentioned that you'd worked with some, I forget if they were, young people who had, depression or other sort of issues like that, and you've seen some pretty good results from that. Do you mind talking about that?
No. In fact, that's one of my deep other passions and joys, education. And I do have a number of students that I've worked with over the years. And whenever I brought the sound bowl, I started noticing how calm and how focused they became. And I would bring the sound bowl to wherever I was, whatever I was doing and working with them. And then they started asking me if they could learn how to play the sound bowl. And I was like, absolutely. I would love to show you what I know. And so we just started that way. And I found that those kids that had the most depression and anxiety, when they actually brought the sound bowl home with them and started playing and practicing themselves, and then I would play for them, their whole spirits, their whole attitude was just uplifted. And most of them now that I've worked with, that especially in combination with the sound bowl, are doing so well. I mean, it's really inspirational.
Oh, that's great and fascinating and wonderful. And, it makes total sense. I mean, I've talked with a couple people on the podcast when I had my knee injury and said, well, I got some tuning forks. I was trying to use those, and it makes complete sense that, sound can help heal. Now, when you go to, you were talking about in a sound bath, you use different kinds of bowls for different things. I just have one bowl. I got it from this guy, Bo Rotting in Copenhagen. I met him. He was playing his handpan out near the Little Mermaid statue. And I ended up, becoming friends, and I bought a bowl from him. And I think it's a D. My friend Chris and Ander, who you met at Wooten Woods, said it's a little sharp. But, I mean, will any bowl kind of work? If you have one bowl, is that good? Does it,
Absolutely. I mean, one bowl's better than no bowls.
Yeah.
Because that sound vibration is getting in your body. When we do sound baths, we put the bowls on the body. For example, the lady I was just telling you about, when I put the D bowl on, we put warm water in the bowl, and then we put it on the D bowl on the heart chakra, and played it for quite a bit of time. And there are several ways to play the sound bowls. You can do what's called inviting, which would be taking the mallet and then just striking it, or you can sing the bowl with a mallet. And so I do a combination. The protocols that I've learned are a combination of both of those things.
Well, maybe, do you mind just tapping it and just, we don't need a whole sound bath thing right here, but I mean, we probably do. But
we do.
Just to hear what the difference between the tapping and the singing.
This is called inviting the bowl.
Okay, that's inviting the bowl.
That's inviting the bowl. And this is called striking the bowl. And this is a beautiful bowl. It's actually a dolphin bowl. And you'll hear why it's called a dolphin bowl.
Whoa. That looks a lot like my bowl.
Uh-huh. And I don't know if your bowl is a dolphin bowl, but they're made specifically to mimic the sounds of dolphins.
Holy smokes. Who knew?
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. And then the singing part is...
And then the singing part is when we rub the bowl. So it's the rubbing or the singing of it. And I don't know, this has the water in it, so let me use this mallet here. I'll bring that closer to the mic. So that's called singing the bowls.
Okay.
And it's very, like the E-bowl that I did was very deep, and that resonance just goes right into the body. I mean, all of them do, but that one, particularly beautiful bowl. I mean, these bowls are all handmade. They're made from families that understand the tradition. So they're made in the traditional way of the Himalayan bowls. And they're made, each bowl is made with intention. They have 7 metals that are molted down, and it takes 3 to 4 people to make each bowl.
Wow.
And they chant and they do the traditional mantras, and they have a focused intention for each bowl.
Wow, very cool. I'm going to India and Nepal in the winter. I'll have to try to get some information from you for who to visit out there.
Oh, absolutely. My teacher's family makes these bowls, and so I would love to give you that information, because I know that there are not very many people making bowls like this. In fact, there are very few. And so they also do, which is really wonderful, they do full moon bowls and new moon bowls. And so if you could get there on a full moon or a new moon and actually go to where they're making the bowls, I think that would just be phenomenal. Wow. I would love that.
Let me see if I can work that out.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of, maybe I'm just, you never know whether something is happening that's kind of new in a way in our consciousness of people, whether it's new for you or new for everybody, or whether you're just finding out about it or whatever. But it seems like there is more of a focus on sound healing these days, sound baths. I know that you've set up a nice place in your house, a sound room for sound baths and all that. What do you see as what's going on with that? I mean, is there more of an awareness of that? Is something happening or coming or changing? Where are we going with this, and how is this sound sort of, are we following along with the sound?
Well, I think we have gone in a direction that is not suiting us anymore. I mean, not that Western medicine doesn't provide a tremendous amount, because it does. It's amazing on so many wonderful levels.
Agreed.
But there's another layer that we've ignored, and that is listening to our bodies and tuning into our bodies. Sound can take you deep within your own psyche, within your own heart. It creates that space. And there are so many new, and I wouldn't say, maybe new isn't really the right word, because they really have been around.
For a long time, yeah.
For a long time. But we're tired of the way Western medicine treats us at this point, because it treats us separately. It treats just the arm, or it treats just the heart, or it treats just the liver. It doesn't treat us as a whole being, as a unit. And so there's a separateness about Western medicine that I think as a society, we're just saying, no, we know we're whole beings and everything is connected. And so we want to find something that helps us connect all of those dots. My oldest daughter is a holistic nutritionist and complementary medicine practitioner. And my youngest daughter is a chiropractor. And so the combination of what they do is really wonderful, because you go in to get a diagnosis, and then you can take that, and Western medicine can give you a diagnosis, at least partially, and then you can take that diagnosis to someone that's a holistic nutritionist, and then a chiropractor, and then you can add sound therapy to that. And so you can actually create this whole level of and treatment for yourself that has nothing to do with drugs and getting cut open and all sorts of different things. You can take control of your own life and your own health. And one of these modalities is sound work or sound bowl healing. And it's very profound and it works. Our teacher works with doctors all over the world. He had just recently 6 of Japan's most premier physicians come and ask him to teach them how to do sound bowl work. And he asked them, well, why do you want to learn sound bowl? I mean, you are famous in your country for what you do. You are renowned. And they said, well, because we have a very specific and deep problem within our society, and that's suicide. We can't keep our kids from committing suicide. And we have done the research, and we have seen that sound is a formidable, powerful treatment for anxiety and depression and such. And so we want to learn ourselves how this works.
Wow. Yeah. My friend Bo, he has a number of Japanese healing bowls, singing bowls too, which are very cool.
They're
different.
beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. And maybe this is tying in, do you think, with kind of maybe a resurgence in other areas of, planetary or human activity and whatever, that maybe we're coming into a new era? It's a little tired of a lot of the, maybe the capitalistic, or maybe the types of things that spoil the water and the air and all those kinds of things, and looking for something a little different. But I think the solution to that needs to come at a deeper level than just, legislation, for example.
Well, it does. And, there isn't a happening on the planet. I mean, that is absolutely, positively true. And while we don't hear about it in our news media and things like that, it's happening. The conversation of us becoming conscious of who we are and the interconnectedness of who we are with this energy of who we are, which is source energy. There's this energy that is within everything, this vibration that's within everything. I mean, Einstein said, everything is vibration. And we're understanding that at deeper and deeper levels.
Yeah.
And so that conversation is happening in the world, and it's growing. In fact, I think it's growing at light speed, even though we don't see it out there on the big TV screen. It's actually happening. And part of that is taking control of our health, understanding that we as human beings are more than just these physical bodies, that there's something else going on, and that we have this abilities that we're learning how to tap into to express more and more and more of our own essence, which is a beautiful, love, divine essence. And as we do that, and that as we become more of that ourselves, that spreads out. It's just like a bacteria. It's the same thing. It is the bacteria of joy. It's the bacteria of happiness.
Yeah, we're not just taxpayers and employees. There's a lot more going on to life, more of who we are. It certainly makes a lot of sense to me, even though it seems like things are just going completely to hell politically, nationally. You kind of got to believe in that underlying thing. There's my bird clock. And it also comes back to intention too, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And things have to break down. If you look at it, when you have a bowl that rises on the body, it has to burst, it has to be lanced before it can actually start to heal. And that's what's happening here in our society and on our planet. There is a tumultuous chaos happening. but there's a lot of toxicity and a lot of layers that are being unearthed and released, and those have to be allowed to transcend, because underneath that is what we're getting to.
Yeah. Well, it certainly feels that way. I mean, it was kind of magical, meeting you there at Wooten Woods, and we had some good conversations. We even had some healing bowl experiences in the dome there with Victor's crystal bowl and my bowl, and we later used that for sending good vibes to Hanks, and it was all pretty special, and really appreciate that we were able to follow up and keep in touch, and I'm looking forward to maybe I'll come down and get a sound bath sometime.
Oh, I would love that. Please, yes. Since I opened my studio here, I'm working on people every day. I know this is my true calling, my divine destiny, and I'm loving every minute of it. So would love to have you come down.
Well, that's so awesome. And you have a new website, I think, don't you?
I do. It's quantumsoundtherapies.com.
quantumsoundtherapies.com. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Linda, I really appreciate, knowing you and the conversations and the things that we've talked about and learning from you, and also particularly that you've taken the time to do one of these podcasts, and, it's just great, and we'll just keep on keeping on.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, and it was really a joy to get to know you, and I'm so happy we're friends and that we will continue being friends. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way. Thanks very much, Linda Helms, everybody. Appreciate it. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.